We've all received minutes of the last meeting. Do we have any additions or corrections? Hearing none, I assume that they're approved as presented. Mary Ann, you want to go through your review process?
Sure. Again, for those of you that may be new to these meetings, we want to provide a little bit of background. In 2017, the residents of the Newman Lake Flood Control Zone District presented to the County Board of Commissioners with a petition to appoint a Board of Appraisers to reconsider, revise, or reaffirm the classification and relative percentages of the parcels within the Flood Control Zone District under RCW 8609. The objectives of this reassessment are for the Board of Appraisers to take a fresh look at the parcels contained within the boundaries of the district and determine or reassess the benefits each parcel derives from both flood control and stormwater management or water quality undertaken by the district. And then based on those benefits, reconsider, revise, or reaffirm the current classification of each parcel with respect to each of those two purposes in the district. In performing this reassessment, the Board of Appraisers is tasked with identifying every parcel that derives any benefit, so the assessments fairly distribute the costs of the district among as many benefited parcels as allowed by law. At the end of this reassessment, the Board of Appraisers will provide the Board of County Commissioners, acting as the supervisors of the district, with a new base map and land descriptions outlining the classifications of the different lands on the base map based on their relative benefits derived separately for one, flood control and water quality or stormwater management. This new base map will be used to levy assessments on those parcels not otherwise classified as non-benefited based on their relative benefit ratios. This is now the 8th meeting of the Board of Appraisers, and after collecting background information, visiting the Newman Lake area properties, and then last meetings, kind of reviewing comments and beginning talking about where the benefit boundaries are. They are beginning the process of identifying benefits received and these boundary areas. So the public is invited to provide input on this process later in the meeting or online on the Board of Appraisers website. And I think that gets us up to date, Gary.
Okay, thank you, Mary Ann. Before we get into the written comment, I want to make the statement that these written comments and the oral comments are intended to assist us in the task we've been assigned. We've received several where there's people throwing missiles at each other, and those are not helpful. And I would ask that cease and desist to throwing the blame on other people, talking about intimidation, things like that. And with that in mind, I think we're going to skip over the first three that aren't really material and aren't really helpful to our task. Brian, would you sure start out with 127, Matthew?
Matthew Wilson, sure. I haven't read these yet. Just saw them yesterday. So Matthew talks about mention of lack of access to many and all properties if the lake flooded Star Road. And the statement was partially correct. People might not be able to access their property via this road. However, there are alternative routes from the north, west, and east, and to most and probably all properties on the lake. I don't disagree that Star Road flooding is bad, but I thought it was fair to call out people could still access their property. So Thank you for those comments, Matthew. Matthew had another comment. Let's see. On fair, what is fair and equitable? Fair and equitable is that Newman Lake costs are managed like other lakes in the state. This would mean those living immediately next to the lake would no longer foot the expense, and the population of the county would handle said costs. When talking about benefits, it's much more than 751 or even 1,700 parcels. It's his understanding parcels by Trent, which aren't part of the map, district map, would be flooded out in peak season if Newman Lake wasn't maintained properly. And of course, thousands of people, even from outside the county, visit the lake and gain both benefit and cause pollution. So I think he's making a statement that there are, more than just those that have been paying in the past are responsible, should be responsible for helping foot the bill, as well as the flooding in Trent problem or perceived problem. Let's see, he's put a link also to assessment map. Did you guys look at that link?
No,
Mary Ann, do you know what that link is on the assessment map? Is that just our district map?
You're muted again.
Yeah, I just clicked on it and it comes up with the small, I can share the screen if you want to look at it here. But it's this small version of the showing and colored shading. It's posted on our website here. Hang on one second here. Let's see here. There, I could double check, but I think that what that link takes you to is our website, where we have posted the small map showing the different areas that benefit.
one other comment is he mentions the thousands of other people from around the county and around the state using the lake, and it's a common thread that's been mentioned in many of the comments we've gotten, but there's nothing we can do about that. That's well beyond our control. We're doesn't fit into any recommendations we can make. I mean, I appreciate the problem, but there's nothing we can do about it. Especially since on this access map you provided, Mary Ann, there's probably a dozen different places you can access the lake, and there's no way to control who gets on the lake and who gets off the lake.
I did want to say something, Larry. We're having a little bit of trouble hearing you, kind of in and out. I don't know if it would be possible to maybe get a little closer to the mic, or just maybe I don't know, or maybe move the mic a little closer. I don't know.
Or I can shout a little louder.
Is that a problem?
Or you can shout a little louder. Yeah.
I think the brake's on. Hit that. There you go. Let's see if we can go a little bit.
Okay, we're moved up closer.
I'm gonna break this side. Is that any better?
Yeah, I can hear you better,
Did
and I
you
think I
say
can
Larry
hear.
or Gary?
It was mostly Larry that I was having trouble hearing.
Maybe I need to also look at at the screen when I talk.
That might help too. Yeah.
Okay, and we got one from Michael.
Yes, in regard to your request for comments on benefits of yellow and red water quality areas on the lake, it looks to me like the yellow areas are the fields and the red are residential. Fields have agricultural tax evaluations, the residences have septic systems. Water quality maintenance of the lake, in other words, preventing the lake from becoming an open sewer, will have very definite implications for all property value in the basin. Tax collection, recreational use, road maintenance, quality of life will all be affected by the degradation of water quality. By limiting the scope of the evaluation to benefits only is not fair. The problem that's created by too many septic systems, too much development, too much erosion, all poorly controlled and mitigated by every entity, residential, agricultural, forestry in the basin, which is just one big granite bathtub. So I guess my comments on this.
It's a pretty bathtub.
My comments on this, limiting the scope of the evaluation of benefits only is not fair, is Michael's comment, but that is what our job is. We are limited to measuring benefits only. We talked about causation in the past, and that's been ruled out. So the way that this process is set up, we can only look at benefits. So while it may not be fair, it's all we have in this current process. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree, and also, and this again has been mentioned several times about causation, and my opinion is that's what we should be doing, but the law says differently, and if they want to change that, they need to talk to their state legislatures or legislators, and it's beyond the scope of what we can do. We're limited by law to assessing what we feel are benefits only. And admittedly, it's going to be somewhat subjective, but our hands are tied on that subject.
So one of the things that I would like to propose that we do is that after we get done reading these comments, that we go through and we discuss the issues that pertain to fair and equitable. And I've got a list of them and lay out for those that are listening what the issues are and how we're able to address each. And hopefully be able after that to focus on how we categorize individual properties. Or I don't really know what you were hoping to accomplish the rest of the meeting, but I thought that if we got that out and we're very explicit about it, that maybe it would help understanding of the people that are footing the bill currently.
I like that idea.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay. Because this issue will come up in that discussion.
Next comment was submitted by Dennis in regard to our last meeting in January. We talked about tax versus assessment. A comparison was made between a tennis club and an assessment, and they're not a tax. The majority of the community members continue to consider it a tax since it's sent to them as part of their Spokane County tax bill. They're not watching these meetings, and no one with broad distribution capability has ever defined them define this to them. Even the advisory board, who's supposed to represent the community, is staying clear of it as they consider it a taxing issue. Letter to the AG, market versus taxable. The explanation of the letter to the Attorney General that is being drafted by the county seemed to reflect their lack of understanding of the issue and inability to even present a question. The request to review the letter prior to its submittal was encouraging. Let's see. He would like to emphasize that the decision by the AG on this value issue is major. If the decision to use taxable values will again be in the situation, there will be 50-acre hayfield that gets completely flooded, pays $2 in assessment, while a lakefront home that is not affected at all will pay 200 plus. And that may be the case. There's no example here of the actual calculation of property.
I think a lot of that.
Can you still hear us? You can?
We can't.
Dialogue box came up saying we have to reboot.
Oh,
Well, let's say no.
Let's see.
Good job.
You hear us now?
Okay.
yes.
Okay. A lot of, I think that subject can be resolved by the formula we presented using values rather than land areas. Whether it be market value or taxable value. Value situation can be solved by not using land areas. Go ahead, Brian.
Okay. Let's see, 5% pay 100% of the bill. The fact that you were confused on community comments stating that 5% of the district is paying 100% of the bill until you got to my previous comment, which explained it, brings into question whether you're actually reading the comments. The meeting also shows that Mary Ann, who understands these numbers very well, apparently is not helping you understand these items at all. The landowners of 5% of the acreage, 1,300 acres out of 26,000, pays the entire bill. This was one of the main two issues that Senator Mike Padden's Senate bill was to resolve. Okay. Do we know anything more about this bill? Is it something we should be considering? Did it pass or?
I think the bill he's referring to is the one that preceded the petition, and that is that it made, and it did pass, it made the adjustments to the RCW to allow the petitioners to petition based on the amount of their, getting a percentage of the, instead of a percentage of area in terms of number of petitioners, it was based on a percentage of how much they paid or something. Yeah.
Okay.
So yes, that's kind of what I think that's what he's referring to, but you may be able to just ask him directly if
Okay.
he decides to.
A Board of Appraiser member asked the question, do people understand that the different classes pay different amounts? The vast majority of the community have never seen a benefit class map that we are looking at. The exception to that would be if the individual would have attended a community meeting more than 30 months ago. I don't believe that anyone has ever explained the maps to them. Unless they were at one of the community meetings prior to the cancellations of those meetings due to COVID. Your statement you made that you have not looked at the individual parcels given to you in comments as examples is disappointing. That brings into question how seriously you are looking at the comments. You have supposedly been looking at the district documents in details for weeks, and most Newman Lake community members have never even seen the documents you have. Any comments on that?
No,
We spend an awful lot of time going through these comments in the meetings, reading them out loud.
Yeah. Yeah. Benefit versus causation. Your dilemma regarding benefits versus causation is a tough one. While it's obvious to me from the meeting that you're finding the performance of a benefit analysis on the flood control portion of the district scope to be quite straightforward, I would suggest that to you that this could be due to the fact you're doing a benefit analysis for flood control to a procedure for flood control districts, RCW 86, which are commonly done by benefit analysis. Where you appear to be struggling is on water quality scope. Might I suggest that this could be due to the fact that you are doing a benefit analysis for water quality to the legal requirements of a flood control guideline for which was never intended. I'm not aware of anyone that has ever done a benefit analysis for water quality, since the benefit region for a public lake cannot be defined. If you were doing a water quality evaluation to a water quality procedure, it would most assuredly include the attribute of causation. Okay, well, we're not doing that, so I don't see how that applies. This mismatch and the fact that your study is limited to an area defined 50 years ago for the purpose of flood control, which in turn does not even include the structures that are flooded by modern day flood analysis, seriously impacts the integrity of your study. The key point here, which is a point supported by other commenters as well, is that thousands of people using the lake each summer benefit from safe water for its recreational value, are exempt from any financial contributions since they do not live within the district boundaries. And yet the appraisers can only charge us who live in the district as stated in the guidelines, which is true. There's also 19,000 acres of watershed above the lake within the district whose nutrient-rich stormwater runoff runs into the lake and feeding the algae. Again, that would be a causation factor. Apparently, this is being considered as causation to the water quality problem in our lake, but not considered to be a benefit. Hence, cannot be considered in this study.
How is it a benefit?
I don't know.
would you say, Larry?
How is it considered a benefit that all that stuff is running into the lake?
I don't think it is.
No, I don't.
Is that what the sentence implies?
Yeah, I'm not sure what it may be intended that it's a benefit for the district to process whatever nutrients run into the lake because of the runoff.
Yeah.
Could be a benefit in that sense, but again, that's the way that I think we've described it. It seems to me it's causation and not a benefit.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you, Brian. It's a causation issue and it's something that's beyond our control.
Is that the whole page is the rest of that comment?
Yeah.
Then I'd like to make a comment. In the middle of it,
Okay.
is that okay?
Sure.
So there's a recurring theme from the comments that I think we should talk about. There is a law that creates this district. And the law says that you can consider some things and you can't consider other things. And we have to follow the law. That doesn't mean we think the law is right. I personally think that there's systems that are probably more fair. it makes sense to me that the people that are residents of the community should pay a larger share of the burden of cleaning up the lake than people from out of the area. But it also makes sense to me that those people should pay. So I agree that the system needs to be changed. The only problem is that we are not allowed to change it. The law does not allow us to change it. And this issue of whether something is a benefit or a cause is something that all three of us think the causation should be considered, but the law does not allow it. Everyone's hands are tied. The residents' hands are tied, county's hands are tied, our hands are tied, unless unless the law is changed. There's an awful lot of this land that is outside of the shaded areas that's still inside the district. And I guess one of the questions I have is, why is the district so bloody big? And when I asked the question earlier, they said it was the entire watershed for the lake. That would seem to imply some recognition of causation. And yet, when you allocate the cost of maintaining the water quality system, you're not able to use causation. We agree. I mean, I'm speaking for the other people here, but we've talked about it in our meetings, and we all agree causation should be considered, and taking some of the costs and allocating to the wider community also makes sense. I think that while you're on that topic, cleaning up the septic system makes sense. I mean, if you really want to change the water quality, that's what has to be done. But those are things that are outside of the scope of what we can do as defined by the law. And it took us many meetings to understand the situation and to understand how hamstrung we are. So we're sympathetic, but even though we're sympathetic, we're unable to do anything about it. And as we get in a little further into the meeting and we talk about fair and equitable issues, this is going to be one of the things that comes up. And not allocating some of the costs based on causation is a problem. Now then, if you're going to do it on causation, you got to figure out where most of the cause is coming from, which will take an awful lot of study by I don't know how many committees. But I think when you get done with it, you're going to find that the properties along the lake that are contributing sewage either directly or indirectly are going to be the major cause. And the water that runs down the stream and off the surrounding hillsides into the lake is in some respects natural. It is clear that farming can put phosphorus into the water and nitrogen into the water. But from what I saw, there was relatively little fertilization going on and almost no animals upstream. And and there are currently efforts to slow down the runoff and to get it filtered before it gets into the lake, efforts that weren't done in the past that address causation. So the causation issue is trying to be addressed currently by other efforts that are outside of what we're doing here.
Yeah, I think we need to put the causation thing to rest. It's not part of our task, and it's confusing the issue for all of us. And like you said, we all agree that it probably should be considered, but the law doesn't allow it.
I think the reason that we keep seeing it in the comments is because it is intuitively obvious that it's unfair that it's not considered.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
But again, there's nothing we can do about it. Talk to your state legislators, get the law changed. Maybe have another board of appraisers deal with the subject if the law is changed. But I think we have got to narrow our scope to the benefit issue and comply with existing law.
Yeah, I agree. So should I continue with Dennis's? Okay.
Yep.
Dennis makes a statement, a point that I believe most of us could agree on is the practice used in most other recreational lakes in the state is that the county should in fact be responsible for safe water quality, including the monitoring and funding of the effort to keep the water safe for human recreation. But again, this is a very relevant fact, cannot be considered under the guidelines of the current study, which we agree with. We just commented on that. Community members must then ask, is this something that's even being discussed between the Board of Appraisers and the employer? It's only being discussed in the fact that community members have commented on it, but again, it's not part of what we're doing on our current scope of work, because like Gary just said, our current scope of work is limited to the law that's in place right now. So,
And again, that's somewhat subjective. I mean, there's no way to get around it. There's no hard, fast formula that we can go by. It's like doing any other appraisal. We make subjective judgments, whether it's the view of, say, Lake Washington, whether, is there a difference between a 10% peekaboo view of the lake as opposed to a 50-degree view, as opposed to an unobstructed view? You have to make subjective judgments, and not everybody's going to agree with you. But hopefully our experience and training is going to allow us to make those subjective judgments.
good point. Dennis goes on to say, what areas actually get flooded? We had asked Marianne if flooding took place outside the district boundaries and if the district extended to the south to Trent Avenue. She then stated that the district extended to Trent in the area of the sump, but there was no follow-up to the question explaining that the district boundaries do not extend to Trent in the area where multiple structures are actually flooded. She would later go on to show you pictures of the 1997 flooding in the field south of the dam inside the district boundaries, but did not show pictures of 1997 flooding that took place downstream outside of the district boundary and up to and on top of Trent Avenue. Okay.
Again, we don't have the ability to extend the district boundaries. We only have the ability to rate benefits within the state, the boundaries, or to change the the boundaries of the zones within the district.
I think we have the authority to change the boundaries of the district. Yeah.
We have this.
We could change this
Yes.
boundary down to here,
No, not the,
and we could move this boundary into
no,
here.
not the flood control district, but the boundaries of the various categories.
Yes, we can change the
Yeah.
color coded categories, but like we couldn't cut out the top third of the district.
No, we can't change the district boundary.
Yeah, and to consider these properties down here that are flooded,
They're outside our authority.
they're outside of the district and we can't change that district boundary.
Okay.
Well, one other comment I'd like to make is I totally agree with Dennis. The county should be responsible for water quality as in other lakes around the state. Whether it's the state or the county that takes care of the lake. But again, that's something we have no control over.
I suppose we could put everything in the zero zone.
Yeah.
Well, the law says we can't do that. We have to have a 0 and we have to have 100.
Oh, we do?
We do. So that's the way I've read it.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a rehabilitation assessment report that was done for the NRCS dated March 2017 that tells everything we need to know about a Newman Lake flood event. Appendix F shows all the inundation areas where all of the structures are impacted. The text of the report also gives you all the elevations that you asked Mary Ann for in the meeting. It also tells you what actually exists today. And apparently we were told the top of the dam is at 21, 29 feet above sea level. But the report says that there's spots that are 21, 27, more or less feet. So 2 feet less along the dam due to settling of peat and so forth. The dam does not hold back the water in the lake during a flood, since the top of the gate corresponding structure is at 21, 26. So I guess those are some pretty important elevations to remember. Top of the gate, 21, 26. Floodwaters actually flow down the channel, overflow the sump, and then progressively flood areas along Trent west of Star Road. So, Mary Ann, I recall talking about those flooding events were more or less rare occurrence and happens, once or a few times. Is that right? Or help me understand, is this a more recurring event that happens?
Make sure I kind of understand your question. So are you talking about the flooding of down below the sink?
Yeah, by the
towards Trent.
in this area of Trent, west of Star Road. I think we talked about a mobile home park and some areas down there that are flooded in these rare events. Is that a common thing that happens annually, or is it like I remember you saying it was more of a rare occurrence?
Yeah, it's since with the new system that, or should say upgraded, improved system that NRCS built us with the grant, it's only happened once since then, and that was in 1997, that it actually water overflowed the sink.
Okay.
Now it I do, from what anecdotal things I've heard, it did happen at least a couple of times previous to those improvements, but we don't have any information recorded on how frequently it happened prior to the improvements.
So the trailer park looks to be north of Trent and west of Star Road. Right. That's the trailer park that they're talking about?
Yes.
Dennis goes on to say that he believes our current understanding of the flood scenario is inadequate, and including our explanation on how the water would flood in the low spots of East Newman Lake Road, which is absolutely wrong. Upstream flooding of fields is caused by runoff rather than lake level rising. Impact of lakefront lots is minimal since the increase to the lake level is a transient elevation since it's overflowing the levee / dam for its entire length of 8,300 lineal feet. Flooding has little effect to the waterfront lots other than to the docks. I would guess that floodwater touches structures on less than 5% of the waterfront parcels on the lake, and that those structures are a few old waterfront cabins and some old boathouses built at the water's edge for purposes of storing boats and are not inhabited. You stated that lakefront parcels benefit from lake level control and have no erosion, etc. Lakefront lots experience a lot of erosion, mostly when the water levels are high, May through June. Erosion is now occurring throughout the boating season from large waves coming from newer boats. Safety. You asked what I meant on my previous comment by the term safety. If the road coming in Star Road is blocked or impeded in any way, an emergency or first responder vehicles are slowed or prohibited from access to the lake community. So I think an earlier comment said there was other access routes. So I don't know if those routes are longer and would slow that stuff, or even if those roads could support the emergency vehicles. It's something we'll consider. Non-waterfront parcels that have legal access to the water, it would appear from the meeting that you're clearly unaware of the extent of the property owners that do not live on the waterfront but have legal access to the lake. They are numerous. Okay. Thank you for that comment.
And Mary Ann did provide us with a map with those legal access points. Thank you, Mary Ann.
Sure.
There's a comment, what are you looking at? It would appear that either the county or district is not providing you with documentation or published reports to support your determinations that the community sees as critical documents, or we're not reading them. There are documents and engineering studies that provide you raw factual data, but your questions continue for request basic information. As I stated in my verbal comment at the last meeting, very few community members have ever seen these maps or had any exposure to the assessment calculation and don't understand the definition of benefit that we are requesting. He does believe that Mary Ann was very honest in saying that the district has provided very little leadership to the district or the community, and where they have, it is only known to very few members of the community. He believes that our study is somewhat in jeopardy since it does not appear that anyone giving you the simple answers to your question that serve as input to your decisions. While he believes you have been given nearly impossible tasks on water quality, working within the guidelines we've been given, he requests that Our report lists all of the documents that you've been provided, as well as a summary of the guidance that we've received from the county council, as this may be required in future areas of contention. End of comment.
Thank you, Brian.
By the way, I hope he wants to talk to us later on.
Pardon me?
I hope he wants to talk to us later on when we open it up to the public, for public comments.
Okay, this a lot of order, but Marianne, we have an item on the agenda, draw map boundaries. Obviously, we're not going to sit here and take colored pencils and draw these things, but my suggestion would be for each of us in the areas we're responsible for to identify assessors' parcel numbers and also assign a percentage based on the areas we feel are benefited and provide them to you, and let your engineering department or whoever does your maps actually draw out any revisions we have. Does that sound feasible? We can't hear you.
You're muted.
Sorry, yeah. Could you try repeating that? Because I'm not sure I heard the first part.
Okay, we're not gonna actually sit here with colored pencils and draw lines on the maps. My suggestion would be that we provide you with any additions or deletions by assessor's parcel number. And also, if it's an addition, under what category would it fit as to the percentage benefit? And then you could have your engineering department actually put them on paper, draw a map. Does that sound feasible?
Yes. Yep, we can do that.
Okay, let's open it up for any members of the public that want to comment.
Oh, before we do that, I'd like to go over areas where we can evaluate fair and equitable.
I don't follow.
So there's a whole bunch, there are about 5 different categories of fair and equitable that have been raised in the comments.
Okay,
And I think it would be helpful to discuss each one so that the public understands.
okay. You got the floor, go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, I do have one note. But it's kind of up to you guys. I think we sent forwarded you the community comments in two documents. I don't know, make sure that you saw both of them. So there were a couple of comments in a separate.
Were those on 115 and 119 from Gordon and Karen?
Yes. Yeah. Did you get
Okay.
those?
Those are the ones that I said we were not gonna really get
Okay.
into, is that basically they involve personal attacks,
Okay.
intimidations, and they really don't have any place in this.
Well, the first one, when it comes to figuring out what fair and equitable is the 5% issue. That only 5% of the properties within the boundary are paying. And that's because they are considered to have a zero benefit in the existing system. Now, we can change that and make it more than that, but the question is, go ahead, Lee. The question is, how does flood control benefit a property that's far up lake? Because we aren't able to consider causation, it's, I mean, I'm open to giving those areas something between zero benefit, above zero benefit. The question is, how do you assume that the forest miles away from the property is benefiting from flood control and or benefiting from water quality? And that's a very difficult, I think it's very hard to argue that they are getting any benefit. There's also a question of whether them not paying is fair. And to me, it seems like it's unfair only because the way the boundaries are drawn. If the boundaries were drawn along the edge of the colored zones, then 100% of the land would be in the boundary. If you considered the data based on households instead of land area, a huge percentage of the people would be. Did you figure out what that is?
It's not right outside the room. I'm not sure where it's coming from.
Okay, Marianne, are you hearing that noise?
Yeah, a little bit of feedback sounds like kind of a squeaky noise. Is that what you're talking about?
Sounds to me like there's a power saw going off somewhere in the building. So at any rate, that's, if you guys are hearing that, we're sorry.
Okay.
So this is an area that I think all of us are receptive to it being an issue of not being fair. But based on the law, I don't see how we can change that in any way. Do you guys?
No, we're bound by the law, and again, I don't think we should get off topic beyond the law. We think it's fair and equitable. We have to determine, and again, subjective, but it's up to us to determine what we think is fair and equitable within the confines of the existing law. And we're wasting a lot of time getting off topic as to what we think it should be rather than what it is.
Yeah, we are.
And I was out of the room for a minute and maybe I missed the comment, but we could change the benefit ratio in a larger part of the area. That is, we have the ability to do that if we can prove there's a benefit.
Yes.
Right. And
Nothing, bad word, prove. We can't prove it.
well, okay, bad word prove.
It's a judgmental call.
So in our judgment, there would be a benefit to those properties. And I think we've agreed so far that a lot of those upper watershed properties do not receive a benefit from flood control or water quality.
True.
In our judgment. So You know, I'm not saying it's fair or equitable. I'm just saying that we've considered it, we've looked at it. And up to this point, we have not been able to make a judgment that there's a positive benefit to a lot of those parcels.
Yeah, and I think we're wasting a lot of time. We keep going back to that issue and back to the causation issue. You know, we've all got our opinion. We seem to agree that causation should be a consideration, but the law says no, it's not, and we can't consider it. So let's stop talking about it.
Okay.
So the next one is day use of people who, many of the people who use the lake don't live on the lake. They come from other parts of the county or the region. Do you think that's a fair concern about it not being fair that they aren't paying?
I agree that it's a fair concern, but there's nothing we can do about it.
How would they do that?
They would have to put a monitor at every one of those public access points, pay them a salary, pay them the benefit, vacation, whatever, sit out there all day long and not see a boat. So it's something that's beyond our control, and let's not get off on a tangent.
It's essentially, there's no way to assign benefit to that.
No,
Not in the current process.
So a third category is that some of the properties have land in two zones. And the way that that causes a disparity in the amount people are paying.
only because the formula now uses land area. If they use value, whether it be assessed value or market value, it's going to eliminate that.
So that's an area we can address.
We have addressed it, and we have suggested a revised formula. And it's up to the county commissioners to, I assume, to approve that. The whole thing is, our whole task is to make a recommendation to the county commissioners. They make the final decision.
Yes.
You know, there's two issues. When you say two zones, there's a split parcel issue, which is a revision of the formula. And then two zones would be a property is in two zones. So let's say it's in 100% and 50%, but it's not a split parcel. Is that what you're talking about? Or are you talking about split parcel?
I don't think there's any parcels that are in two zones except for the splits.
Well, there could be.
I recall seeing one or two. They were down at the southeast end of the lake, but we don't need to get bogged down in that.
It seems to me they ought to be addressed the same way.
It should, the formula should be the same. Whatever area is in one ratio is valued at that, and the ratio then changes for the second half. Those two are added together and you come up with the assessment. So that should be a non-issue. So, okay. So I think we've covered split parcels, and we'll make sure that the formula is correct and handles that.
So then, I think the last issue that seems to be, that comes up as a fair and inequitable is the fact that some of the parcels aren't paying based on their assessed values. Some of the upland parcels are paying on their what's the word for the other?
Current use.
The current use. And I think we all feel like they ought to be paying based on their assessed value, not the current use.
Correct. And that's the opinion that's been requested from the AG.
Yeah. So all three of us believe that they should be paying based on assessed value, but it is something that they're requesting the AG make the decision on. But there's a complicating factor with it, and one that kind of nullifies it as an issue. And that is all of those areas, I think, all of them, or at least the vast majority of them, like maybe high 90s%, are given a zero zone. So regardless of what the value is, you're going to multiply it by 0 and they're not going to pay anything.
Okay, but the problem comes in, is the example that Mary Ann put up for us. You'd have a $700,000 home sitting on the lakefront. It occupies 10% of the property. Okay, the back portion of the zero benefit is 90% of the area times 0 equals 0. So the house on the lake is being undercharged for the benefit because it only applies to 10% of the land area.
I see that problem.
And now if we take,
How do you resolve that?
well, that's what the formula that I put forward is that you've got 90% of the value on the lake. So that should be assessed at the value, not the 10% area.
But even if it's assessed at the value, you're going to multiply it by 0.
No,
Not the
No.
lakefront part.
not the lakefront
But
parcel.
the upland part you would, right?
Yeah, but instead of having,
So it doesn't make any difference.
yes, it makes a big difference.
Oh,
You've got 90% of the land area in the upland parcel. That's 0, right? 10% of the land area is under that $700,000 house. So only $7,000 is being assessed. Or being assessment for the water quality, let's say. Where it should be turned around and the 90% of the value is on the waterfront. And 90% of 700,000 is what, 630,000. And that's where the flood control should be assessed, is on that $630,000. But right now it's only on 10% on $77,000.
yes.
So the greatest value should pay the greatest amount.
Yes. I agree.
And that was the basis for the formula I presented. Was
That's that split marshal issue. And so I think we have a solution to that.
Yeah.
I think your formula is the solution.
Yep. And that makes it fair and equitable.
So I think that leaves the only issue left for us to consider that is on the basis of fair and equitable is whether these zones and the percentages assigned to them are fair and equitable.
Correct.
And I think that's the bulk of what we're supposed to do now.
And that's a subjective judgment call. In most cases, there's some cases where it's pretty obvious, but. Let's take a 10-minute break here.
Okay.
Okay, did you have a time you wanted to come back or you just,
10:20.
okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
See you 10:20.
Okay, let's come back into session. Before we get into the public testimony, do any board members have anything they want to address?
Not at this point, not for me.
Okay. All right, we're ready to take public comments. Do we have anybody on the line that wants to talk to us?
Of course, if you'd like to provide, hold on a second.
Ron, have we got anybody on the line? Can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I have some audio issues. Looks like we have Dennis up, and then for people in the audience, if you'd like to provide comment, just use the raise hand function, or if you're on the phone, *9.
Can you hear me, Ron?
Yeah, Dennis, if you're ready, go ahead.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dennis.
Morning.
Let's see, let me make a couple comments and then I'm open to any questions that I can answer on anything that I have said. You know, one of the issues is, as you talk about resolutions of issues, I believe you tangle up, as most of us do, between water quality and flood control. The flood control map that currently exists, I think, is really pretty good. And the issue you brought up, where the people way up north on the side of Mount Spokane should donate, I don't think that's anybody's contention. I think the issue, if you took what we have for flood control and you updated it to the current analysis, use this 2017 report, and just reviewed those percentages, and with the existing guidelines, you have to stay within the current district boundaries. I think you guys are 95% there if you fix those split lot problems as you say you're going to. So flood control, I don't think is a contention, as a big contention. As Mary Ann stated, the minimum flood control charge right now is $2 and the maximum is a little over 200. So flood control is not the big issue if you solve the split lots. Let's keep in mind, though, that 85% of the budget is water quality. And you currently have 85% of the total budget paid for by the approximately 430 waterfront lots. So the fair and equitable issue is, are you telling me that the 430 waterfront lots sustain 85% of the benefit of the flood or of the water quality issues on the lake? And that is what I think some of us are saying, yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. I don't think that the waterfront people generally feel that we should pay equal or less than other people. I think most of them I've talked to feel that the waterfront should be paying the higher rate as a ratio. The problem is the other people farther away should be paying something. And of course, you are defining
What do you
that
mean
as
when you say that, other people further away?
your crosshatched zone. In other words, you're 0%. That's what you called them, I think.
Okay,
And-
so the
and it may not-
0% have no cross hatching. I mean, they're just,
Well, you have the map in front of you that outlines the district,
yes.
and you have the assessment area in the map in front of you that is colored. It is the difference between the colored section and the rest of the district inside the district boundary.
And you think that those areas should pay something? Is that what you're saying?
I do. And that's a small something.
So what bet, so so we don't have opinions formed on this, and we're asking for input. And so what we have to do to form opinion is to decide what the benefits are that, to those parcels, that we can put some sort of percentage / numerical number to. And we need help. What's the benefit to those parcels of water quality?
I mean, the benefit to me, and you can play semantics, I guess, is those lots all have uncontrolled or unmitigated stormwater runoff allowed.
Okay,
Benefit
Dennis, you're
is-
talking about causation now. And not-
Well, no, now you're playing semantics. You want to know how to word a benefit. I would translate that. And again, this is my opinion, that the benefit to them is they don't have to control their stormwater runoff. Now, you can translate that and call it a causation, but I'm saying, no, I look at that and say, I think that's a benefit. Is it worth 5 or 10%? In my mind, it certainly is, because again, I don't think that the 430 of us pollute this lake. If you want to know the percentages of where the, I'll use your word
Who
causation.
pollutes the lake isn't part of how you determine benefit.
Okay, let's turn it around and I'll revise. I was improper in my semantic. Do the 430 of us on the waterfront sustain 85% of the benefit of the water quality in the lake?
I'd have to say that under the current law that we have to abide by, that is correct. That's the way. it
Well,
is.
wait, I don't think that 85% is chiseled in stone anywhere.
No, not 85%, but a majority of the benefit is enjoyed by those around the lake for water quality. It's the way the law is written. It's the way that we have to interpret it. We have to have a 0 class, we have to have a 100% class, and we have to have something in the middle. And that's just the way it is. I'm not going to say it's fair, but under the law, it's the way it has to be determined. So looking at, is it fair that 85% of the people pay? I have to say that under the law, it's fair if we can't prove benefits to other parcels.
So Dennis, if you were sitting in our seats and you were trying to determine benefits, what concepts would you use to assign more benefits to off the water parcels that are around the lake that are currently in the color coded areas? How would you transfer? So essentially you have to transfer some of the costs from the waterfront parcels to some of the non-waterfront, but still close by parcels. How would
Yes.
you do that? What concept would you use to determine increased benefits to reallocate those benefits? That's what you have to do, is you have to reallocate the benefits.
One of the things that has come up multiple times over recent years that I've been involved in this is real estate agents, as well as some of the leaders of our community who are contacted by potential buyers in our community. Our real estate prices look like, the blade on my saw. They go up and down very erratically. And many people who are looking to move to the lake look at or ask what the problems are. And we say that, and in truthful, we say their water quality. So one of the benefits I would certainly isolate on is the stabilization of values. The tax assessor seems to think that our lakefront properties are worth a whole bunch now in recent years because, quote, they're on the water. Yet we all sustain as a community the benefit of stabilizing our costs, because potential buyers that come in aren't looking just at waterfront, they're looking at the community, lake views, whatever you want, a rural community. But those are the things that I think you have to try to get a little creative. And I don't know how to get those to you. When I use numbers like the waterfront people are paying 85% of the water control or water quality bill, I'll send you that data, but I have no means to attach a document to send to you. In 2016, when I looked at this study in great detail, I think it was 84.63% of the budget for water quality was paid by waterfront. Any number that I use, I would be more than happy to send you the documentation on, but I have no means to do that.
Okay,
So Dennis, let me ask you a question about stabilization of property values. Do you believe that an upland watershed parcel that measures 160 acres and is oriented to timber, its property value is stabilized by water quality efforts at the lake?
I think that one of you had previously stated you need to go from 100% to 0%. When we have met with the owner of Inland Paper, who owns a huge amount of acreage on the very up end of the district, the improvements they've made over the years, which are significant to their property, I don't know that I would advocate that would deserve any contribution, and that might be one of those that are zero.
Mhm.
If you were upstream in any kind of proximity to Thompson Creek or anything, I would say that does deserve a smaller percentage, but some contribution.
My point here is this, is that, in using that 0 and 100% range of values that we need to do, and we can, and we make the assumption that, the upland parcels are not stabilized in value because of their size and their use and other things. Where do you then draw the line from where it's currently benefited to the other 0 parcels? I mean, how would you do that? How would you say that property values are stabilized on other properties? Is it by size? Is it by use? It's a concept that's not easily interpreted, at least in my mind. I don't know where you would draw that line on stabilization of property value.
And I think
if you're not multiplying it times market value, it's not going to make any difference. I mean, if their value is discounted by 90%,
those are simply the properties that are now paying $2, which in accordance with the age of our thing is seen as the minimum payment, which of course is one of the issues, that a minimum payment of $2, let's get serious. But there's nothing I can do because that's written straight in the law. A couple other, let me see if I can get a comment.
so Dennis, you know that currently there's in the water quality area, There's 100%, a 60%, a 30%, a 10%, and a 0 zone.
That's correct.
Okay.
I have all those maps, and again, I've offered to you twice that same map you're looking at, except of the colored zone that labels the parcel number of every single one of those parcels and highlights those that are split lots around there. I've offered it to you twice, but I have no means to even get that to you to help your information and stuff. So
Yeah, we have those maps, Dennis.
you don't have, you have the colored zone map with all of the parcel numbers labeled on them.
Yes, with all the parcel numbers
Yeah,
labeled.
here's one right here. That's,
Are the parcel numbers on that one?
all the parcel numbers are on here, yes.
And-
There are like 10 of these maps in a stack here on the table.
No, I have the same maps. They're a couple years older than yours, but so
So
I
Dennis,
guess,
I know how you can get that information to us. If you have a phone, take a picture of it and send it to Mary Ann. She can send it to us.
We have the maps that he's talking about. In this little folder, we've got all of them. Mary Ann supplied them to us before we took our tour.
because you, as you talked about earlier, one of you suggested split lots versus lots that are in multiple classifications. Those, in fact, I believe are the same thing. I believe the total of those is 60. And again, you can look those up. I think I've sent you that list early on in your study. So those are the only 60 that cross lines. Some of those are underpaying. Some of those are overpaying. But all that information, I believe you have.
We have it all, Dennis, thank you.
All right.
Dennis, let me ask you this question. On all those parcels that you sent, I didn't look at every single parcel because I felt that the split parcel recalculation is going to take care of all of those issues. Are there any parcels on your list where the split parcel recalculation won't? There's some other underlying issue that this new calculation won't address?
No,
Okay. So there's really no need to go through all of those parcels and look at them if we feel the recalculation will take care of it.
yeah, I think in a recent comment, I had simply sent you 3 examples. One where a person is overpaying, and that would be down on Hauser Road in flood control. And one of them was a lakefront lot that has a small parcel on the lakefront and a couple acres up on top of the hill. And those are called the same parcel number, which is about the craziest example I can give you. And I mean, I was just trying to give you a perspective of the type of things. But no, if you have those 60 and you solve appraisals for each of the segments, you have solved that problem.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Dennis, thank you.
Dennis, we are trying to be responsive to the equity issues. And to some of them we can be, and to some of them we just can't.
You are seriously limited, and trust me, I fully understand what you're talking about what the scope of your study is. And what I'm trying to simply impart to you is, so your study is not going to solve our problem on water quality.
Yeah.
And I guess what I'm really trying to ask you to do is, you have given us several of your opinions here this morning that I heartily agree with. But you need to put that in your report, because as our follow-on action with our legislators, as you suggested, it would be nice to be able to say that you guys studied it and that was something that you actually agreed with.
Good point, Dennis.
Dennis, I'd like to ask for your input on another issue. One of the things that I'm wondering about is if the flood areas need to be reconsidered south of the lake. As I look at the aerials that Mary Ann presented to us the other day, the areas that were flooded seem to correspond with the what is that, purple color zone. And then there's a lot of area outside of that, but it's within the FEMA flood designated areas. And she has indicated that at the south end of the purple area, there's a rise in the land
Correct?
that prevents flooding to the south. So you've driven that road to 6 bazillion times. Does the allocation that is currently, the shading and everything that is currently in place seem to be reasonable, or is there a need to change that? And if so, what's the rationale on a benefit basis?
I believe in the flood control subject to the area you're talking to. That is very close to what it currently is. I think your rationale to verify that would be simply to overlay the flood or the assessment zones onto the most recent flood analysis we had, which was that report I gave you from 2017. So to answer your question directly, I think what we have is really close, but you ought to verify that to a more modern analysis, because remember that rise to the south, which I believe is about 12 feet. Mary Ann can verify that. That water that floods down there in those fields actually sits in that basin while it drains down the canal. And that's that's why that flooded area peters out so dramatically, is it's still escaping down the channel and it can't get over that 12-foot rise.
So the houses that are along Star Road that are south of the shaded area, do those ever flood?
No, not along Star Road. The flooding would be in the areas that are currently shown. Then the water goes down the channel until it overcomes the percolation in the sump.
Yeah.
And so the sump then floods, and that backup of water then goes westward, parallel down Trent, if you will, and floods those houses.
Yeah.
If you take that map you have there and go below the colored zone inside the district, I don't know that the flooding ever gets above the banks of the channel.
Okay, good enough. That's been one of the things I was concerned about.
And that's why I was concerned. If you use that 2017 map, which again, Mary Ann can confirm is the latest, I think. If you just look at that, I think that gives you everything you need. It also shows you a black dot on their map for any time that a structure is impacted, which is really helpful, I think.
Yeah, I've seen those maps working on floodplain areas on the rivers in this part of the state.
So again, I think flood control is really quite direct. And again, that's what our procedure was meant to address by benefit analysis, is flood control. And I don't think the logic we're using today is much different than the logic we used in whenever the 60s when we created these maps. Water quality is the main issue, which really has nothing to do with benefit analysis and flood control. And that's I understand that's our problem, not your problem, but I would appreciate you guys recognizing that, which you clearly have this morning.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Dennis.
Okay, guys, good luck.
Thank you.
Appreciate the help.
Ron, is there anyone else?
If you'd like to provide testimony, please use the raise hand function or *9 on the phone. And we'll wait a few seconds to see if people want to provide comment.
Hey, Ron,
I'm not seeing anyone else.
Okay.
are you there, Ron?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, off the subject, but how many touchdowns is Cup going to score in the Super Bowl?
Oh, at least 2.
God, I hope so.
Go Eagles.
You want us, no, it's too early to stop for lunch. What's next?
Well, let's wait a couple minutes and see if we have anybody else sign in.
I'm gonna run an errand while we do that.
Okay.
Okay. Mary Ann? Dennis mentioned putting the 2017 layer of flood on this map. Is that what's on here now, or is it something different?
I can get you that, the 2017 report. Actually, I haven't forwarded some of that because it's been kind of
You hear her?
internally.
Barely.
Barely hear you, Mary Ann.
Sorry,
Oh, okay.
my mic was up. So, the 2017 report has kind of I'm happy to provide that to you along with the inundation map from that. We do have more up-to-date ones based on some refinements that NRCS did. But those reports are still in draft because we're getting trying to get dam safety office approval on them. But I can get you that 2017 report and the inundation map from that after the meeting. Happy to.
Yeah, I think our goal here is just to make sure that we have the most up-to-date flood information, you know, so we can establish the right benefit to those areas. And Dennis thought that, these areas are close, but it would be good, I think, to use the most recent, even if it is a draft, to establish those boundaries moving forward.
Yeah, so I did send you the dam breach map that's from the draft. So you have that, and then the natural scenario from the draft.
Okay.
So you have those, but I will, just for comparison, I'll get you the ones that Dennis is mentioning too, from the 2017 report.
Another question for you, Marianne. I noticed in researching some of this access thing that the assessor scout maps show a different configuration for a lot of the parcels than what are shown on the maps you provided. Which one do you think is most accurate?
It should be the same layer. So it could just be that maybe there's been some, what I would say is if you see that, let me know and I will try to verify. It could be that there was an update since we did those maps. I'm not sure.
Okay, let me give you an example.
Okay.
Assessor's parcel 56023 dot 9060.
Okay, I'll look that up.
And the other one was the same 56023 dot 9029.
Okay, so what you're saying is the boundaries shown on your maps are different than what's shown on Scout?
Well, on the scout maps, for example, at 29, on your maps, it shows a very narrow frontage on the east Newman Road. The census map shows a substantial frontage.
Let me,
It's not difference in scale.
No. Shape of the parcel is different.
You have the other one.
No, I don't have the scout map here. Anyhow, I don't need an answer right now, but
okay,
you take a look at it.
So Dennis said something that got me thinking. So maybe one of the ways to address fairness is to change the minimum amount paid. Is there any way to do that? Is that a Reese question?
Again, that's beyond the scope of what we're doing. That'd be an administrative decision by the county.
I think we had a little trouble hearing you at the end of your question there. Could you repeat the question?
Yes, please.
So he talked about a $2 minimum payment assessment. One of the ways to address the fairness issue with those upland parcels would be to increase the minimum payment. Is there a way to do that?
I'm not certain. I would need to look into that.
That would be a decision for the county.
Yes.
Not part of our decision. It's, again, stuff with benefits.
Frankly, that might go a long ways. If you change that from $2 to some other number, like maybe $20, which is still minimal.
I'm pretty sure that that $2 minimum is in the RCW, and then also it only applies to those that get a charge. So just to make sure you understand that. So if they have zero charge, it's zero. But if they have a $1.50 charge, then it gets bumped up to $2.
I see.
That makes sense.
No, but I understand it.
And that would be consistent with my understanding as well. But I'll look a little deeper into that.
Yeah, maybe there's some phraseology that can be interpreted differently or something.
Okay, any other items we need to discuss or feel we need to discuss?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a few questions about this Newman Lake access points map that Mary Ann provided. Some of these are public access and some are private, is that right?
Yes, yeah. We just thought we would be kind of comprehensive on that, so you knew what was what.
Okay. Okay.
So really the only true public ones, I guess you might say, would be the boat launch and the McKenzie Conservation Futures. And then there's the 2 resorts, which provide access, I'm assuming, to paying customers. And then
So-
I think most of the rest are homeowners associations or some are probably kind of right away too.
Yeah, one I noticed that's missing, at least in my interpretation, is near Peninsula Drive and on Coleman Road. I think on the smaller maps, there's a public right of way that runs from the road down to the lake. And I would interpret that as that's public access to the water. At least in our local county, that's the way it's considered. I don't know if Spokane County is the same or not, but
May not be effective public access. Not
I think
paid.
those are interpreted as being for fireboat access, but we can look at that a little closer, or at least solicit some input on it.
there was another one up by the northwest section of the lake. As West Newman Lake Drive ends, there's a private road that goes down to some other home sites down in there. Somewhere up in
Yeah.
there, there's another similar county-owned property that went to the lake. And it seems to me that these public acts or these right-of-way points are associated with the secondary parcels and their benefit for water quality. And so that's what I was trying to establish in asking for this map.
Well,
I'll
maybe
can look into that.
this parcel has contractual ability to use that access point, and the one next to it doesn't.
Right, and we don't know. There are some homeowners associations here that are noted, so we can look at those.
Marianne, what's the difference between, well, I know what the HOA is. What's a POA?
Property Owners Association. So it's
Oh,
kind of the
okay.
same thing.
Gotcha.
That's all the questions I have.
So are we thinking about adjourning?
I think so. There's no other,
Well, before we do that, it seems like the next task in front of us is for each of us to come up with proposals for our individual areas.
Yeah, that was gonna be my suggestion. We each sit down, and as I mentioned earlier to Marianne, what would work for her, come up with a list of deleted parcels, a list of additional parcels, and also assign the percentage.
Okay. And I'm assuming we would, in the process, reconsider whether these lines are in the right places.
Well, that's what I was referring to, as maybe deleting parcels or adding parcels.
I see.
Is it, you may think that in your opinion, that in your area, you should delete parcel 1. Maybe you should add parcel 10, or whatever, but anyway, come up with a list and we can talk about it at our next meeting.
So in that process, will we be determining the percentages?
Yes.
So that I think we need to talk about criteria for determining percentages. And are we ready to do that this week, or do we want to postpone that, or?
Well, I think we need to express our opinion as to the percentage so that we've got something in front of us at our next meeting where we can talk about criteria for the percentages rather than talk about a vague issue at this point in time.
Okay. Is that what you think also, Brian?
I mean, I could go either way. I don't know that I'm ready to talk about it today.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to maybe go over it myself once and have more information as a basis to talk with you guys next time.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not ready to talk about it yet either. I think we need to sit down and look at it and put them on paper. And then we can say, I think this is because that, you know.
When I went out and drove the areas, there's this area right in through here is way up on top of the hill. You need a tramp to get down to the water.
That's where the gated entrance is.
No, this is actually along here.
You come around the end of the lake there, you start up, there's a crosshatch there, I think. Kind of
You
a,
mean this area?
yeah.
No, I'm talking about this.
Yeah, I know you are, but if you drive, coming from the south end, right after you go past what appears to be a swamp area or field area,
Yeah.
and then the next place up, there's a big gate, fancy gate up there. Is that the parcel you're talking about?
No. It's Honeymoon Bay, it sits up above Honeymoon Bay.
Oh, okay. Farther up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I drove out Honeymoon Bay Road, which is right along the lake, and then you look up at these properties, which are at the elevation of West Newman Lake Drive, and I agree, it's way above the lake.
And those are in 60% zones, I think.
So red is 10% for a flood.
How about water quality?
Well, it's in here's water quality. And that's 60%.
So are we going to? Never mind. It's pretty obvious where the break is.
Yeah, I think was looked at before as a secondary parcel.
So I looked at everything up through here. Am I supposed to be, or am I cut off here?
We're gonna have some overlap. I looked at everything, but
Yeah.
I think my goal is to just look at my notes and listen to what you guys say about your areas, and I'll have questions. And I think, you guys will have questions on mine, but I'm sure that we're gonna overlap in certain
You're gonna
areas
question my judgment?
all the time.
Remember, I'm reviewing your appraisal. Okay, I think pretty well concluded everything we came here to do today. If anybody has any further comments?
I do have a question for you. In kind of looking at access issues that we did here in the last couple of weeks to put together the map, we did at least start attempting to get a handle on the plats of the secondary lots. And we ended up, there's like 14 plats of secondary lots, and we could try to take a look at those to determine, which may have access rights to some extent or whatever if it's written in the plat. But I didn't know if that was useful to you at this point. If not, we won't. It'd be fairly extensive effort. So before we started on it, I thought I would check with you if you felt that was worthwhile or not. That
Well,
makes sense.
my feeling is that it would be hard to make a decision without knowing about that.
Okay. Some of the access is going to be hard to determine because some of it may be based on easements, like the properties on Osprey Lane, for example. They all have I found out here, just asking someone up there, that they have an easement, and we showed that on the map. So that would be really hard to know without, doing almost basically a title search on all the properties, which is probably beyond our kind of scope or ability, but we could,
So you're wrestling with the same issue that I think each of us was wrestling with when we were looking at trying to make the decision. Do you want us to do a title search? I mean, that doesn't. So yeah, that I don't know how you decide whether that's appropriate or not.
Is there, Marianne, is there a realtor that specializes in, Newman Lake properties that has knowledge of some of these plats that do and don't have waterfront access? Could we maybe interview them on a next meeting or have a phone call with them to get an idea of maybe they can share with us, okay, these people on have a right to go use the lake. I forget the name of this development. It's by Honeymoon Bay Road, and I think it's that cluster of homes that are kind of back up in the trees. It's kind of a low spot. And it's highlighted.
Oh, right.
Pardon me?
Yeah, I think I know where you're talking about. It's where the drainage comes down.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of at the end of the pointy end of the triangle, kind of.
Yeah. And so
Yeah, we can check the plat on that one and see, but again, that may not be, totally comprehensive unless. But I'm not aware of a particular real estate agent, but I can ask. So.
okay.
So maybe an idea is to start researching, but stop at the point that you have to do a title search of every property. And if we need to supplement it, maybe we can supplement it by talking with a real estate agent.
Okay.
Sort of a find as efficient a way as there is to get to as much of the information as possible.
Okay.
Next meeting, 2 weeks, February 16. No,
Oh, 16? Yeah, that'll work. Yeah, I was thinking I'm gonna be gone the 19th through the 26th, so 16th will work.
okay.
Same location,
Pardon me?
same location, or would you guys be on your separate Zoom or laptops?
I think we need to meet here again.
Sounds good.
Does meeting here seem to work good for your purposes?
Yeah, I think it's great for us on staff side.
Okay.
I think it's easier for us to communicate as a group when we're in the same room.
I agree.
We're more free with comments, and it's easier to understand rather than kind of a virtual back and forth. So if it's not too much trouble, I'd like to still meet here.
Yeah, we should be able to, we'll look into getting the room again, but yeah, at least probably until we get into their busy season, it's probably not a problem, but
That we're gonna be discussing specific areas on the maps, and
Right.
we can lay out a big map in front of us, and we can all see it and point to it. Okay.
So let's,
Would it be,
just
sorry,
so I have- excuse me?
sorry to interrupt, same time, 9 o'clock?
Yes,
Yes.
Did
Just
you-
so that I don't make any mistakes. Can you kind of summarize what I'm supposed to do between now and then?
between now and then is to go through your area and to put together a list of additions or subtractions on flood control, additions or subtractions on water quality, and allocate the percentages for any new additions or any changes in the existing percentages.
Well, I'm not ready to change existing percentages until we talk about it. I think we all have to have the same criteria.
Well, probably we can eliminate the percentages and just
Okay,
additions or deletions. And then we can talk about percentages. Then we can each support why we're adding a parcel or we're deleting a parcel. And then we can discuss percentages after that. Does that work for you, Brett?
Yeah.
Get a printout so that we can each look at each other's areas.
okay.
Yeah, I think once we get into it, it'll be more straightforward.
No, I agree.
Yeah, and then we can tweak it when we're back together. You know, I think individually, we may find something that, you know, piques our interest or asks the question why or why not, and then we can dive into that more. And then that may spur, you know, one less benefit area or an additional benefit area. We don't know.
Well,
So,
Okay. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I second it.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Are we doing